Hey guys, what's going on? DeltaBot here, back with episode 2 of the Drift tutorial series. Now, I will admit, first thing is I lied at the end of the last episode. I said that this episode would be about tuning, but that's not going to happen. I decided it would be easier to teach this next part with it was still mostly stock other than rear-wheel drive converted Audi, because you still shouldn't be worried about angle. This car will light the tires up through third gear, so that's plenty. And you really don't need to get too sideways for this. It's actually easier if you don't have too much angle. So we're just gonna stick with the bone stock one. Now we're gonna stay on the Catalunya school circuit, but we're not gonna use the same turns we used last time. We're going to go over here to the S's, because this is going to be about the lines you can take through turns and as well as transitions. And that was repetitive. Anyways, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about drift lines, because they're very important when it comes to how your car is going to behave through the turn, setting yourself up for the next turn, and so on. And you can also do corrective steering and throttle input if your line's bad, but it's easier just to start off with a good line. So we're going to start with a few bad lines. First is too narrow. A couple things can happen here. You can either get into the grass and that'll catch the front of your car and you'll spin out, or you can do what I just did there and you'll end up going too wide coming out of the turn. Now you can also go too wide and you'll most likely stay too wide, or there's another thing that I'll show you here in a sec. You can also overcook it trying to get the car to tuck into the turn, and the back end will come too far around and you won't be able to get out of the turn. Like this. So you want to be careful setting yourself up on the right line, and if you do that, you're going to have a much easier time drifting through the turn. So generally what you want to do is take sort of a normal racing line. It's wide to narrow to wide. You want to start out wide, get to the apex. You want the front of your car to pretty much hit the apex like you would if you were driving on a racing line. Oh, hold on a sec. I just did what I told you guys not to. That's a good example. Do as I say, not as I do. You want to get to the apex and then go back out to the wide side of the track. That way your car can maintain its attitude or its angle all the way through the turn. It just makes it easier if you've got a good line to maintain a smooth and solid drift. You don't have to worry about correcting your line. You don't have to worry about getting more angle to get the nose to tuck in. You don't have to narrow up the drift because you're too far into the turn. And it generally makes everything easier. Now the second thing we're going to talk about is taking a wider turn. Now this turn right here isn't one turn, it's two, but you can see how you can still use it as a wide turn. It'll be pretty easy to show. In between these two turns, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to narrow up my angle so the car will go straight more and it won't turn in like that, and then you can rotate the car again and just balancing the power slide all the way through like you did in episode 1. And that really enables the car to take a wide turn easier. If you've got the car tuned right, you can actually maintain a lot of angle through there either way. But since we're doing this with a bone stock car, it's just basically learning how to manipulate the car itself. When we get into the tuning, then you can worry about how the car behaves. But right now, it's just about car control and learning how to change the car's attitude based on what you want it to do. And that's the main reason I decided to stick with the bone stock car for this, is because it's more about learning car control than anything else. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do transitions. I'm going to do the same thing I did with the line. There's a couple things you can do wrong here. First thing is you're drifting through this turn, you got to flip the car back the other way, and if you counter steer too late, you'll get the car to over rotate. That can be fixed through tuning, but like I said, this is more about learning how to control your car than it is learning, how to tune. Once you know how to control your car and how you like to drive, you can tune your car accordingly. Now the second thing that could happen is you can counter steer too early or too hard. That'll stall the drift or cause you to fishtail, and I showed you an example of fishtailing in the last video. basically the same thing happens. You shoot off to the side that you don't want to go, and there's a wall waiting to meet you most of the time. So those are two of the biggest things that I run into when I struggle with transitions. So my rule is when the weight starts transferring from what was the inside, now the outside, since you're going the opposite direction. Once it starts transferring to the outside wheels, which in this case will be the right side of the car, you should have almost full counter steer to the right in order to maintain your angle through the turn. So that's generally what I think of when I'm learning to counter steer or to transition with a new car. Once that weight is on the outside of the car, that's when I want to have the counter steer in for a good transition. There are a couple ways to make transitions easier. Holding the handbrake will slow the rotation of the car, depending on, if you're not already over-rotated. And also using the normal brakes, as long as you don't lock them up if you're not using ABS, you can slow the transition of the car, slow the rotation of the car, and make it easier. That's how I learned to do it. Once you get practiced enough and once you're comfortable enough with your car, it's pretty easy to get the car to rotate and transition without using the brake or without using the e-brake. It's a lot easier, a lot more consistent, but it depends on where you're at. If you're just starting to try and learn it, I'd say stick with using the normal brakes to slow the transition up. So that's all I've got for this episode. Those are two really important things. But like I said in the first episode, if you can't get the basic drift down, there's no point in trying to do this stuff. So make sure you can power slide and you can comfortably enter a turn. Next time, I promise we will be doing tuning, and I know that because I made that video before I made this one, and then I thought, wait a minute, I should talk about this first. So that will be next. Like I said, we're going to be sticking with this car. I've already got one tuned for myself, actually, that I use a lot, but I'm going to start from scratch just to show you guys the process I take for tuning a car. That's all I've got. Make sure you like and comment if you enjoyed the video. Make sure you give it a thumbs down if you did not, and I will see you next time. Much else. And really, we're going to start with just the most basic thing while I'm standing here. And for my troubles, I get shot in the face. But what?